A locked house, 8 bodies, an axe left dripping in the corner. But here's the question that's haunted historians for a century. Why did the killer stay? Hours after the massacre, neighbors swore they heard laughter echoing from inside. Toys rocking, floorboards creaking under invisible feet. The police found every door and window sealed tight from the inside. This isn't just a murder. It's a riddle wrapped in blood. And what if the real horror isn't who did it, but what waited in that house long after the axe fell? 8 people, 1 axe. 0 answers on June 10, 1912, in the quiet farming town of Villisca, Iowa. The Moore family closed their eyes for the last time. Josiah and Sarah Moore. Their 4 sons, their 2 daughters, and 2 young girls sleeping over, Lena and Ina Stillinger. By dawn, all 8 lay dead in their beds, skulls shattered by an axe so brutally swung, the blade splintered from the force. But here's what keeps true crime experts awake at night. The killer didn't flee. They lingered. Hours after the murders, neighbors reported flickering lights inside the house. The sound of bare feet pacing upstairs. A child's muffled giggle. Yet when police arrived, every door was locked. Every window latched. From the inside, no footprints outside. No fingerprints. Just a single axe leaning against the wall, as if waiting for its next victim. Over a century later, we still don't know who did it, or why, but the clues left behind, they tell a story far more sinister than a random act of violence. Mirrors covered with sheets, victims' faces hidden under blankets, a basin of pink-tinged water in the kitchen, as if the killer paused to wash their hands and admire their work. This wasn't just a murder, it was a ritual, and tonight, we're peeling back the layers of one of America's most bone-chilling, unsolved mysteries. The question is, are you ready for what we've uncovered? A warm summer night in Villisca, Iowa, a town so quiet, neighbors left their doors unlocked. The Moore family home glowed with life. Josiah, 43, a respected businessman with a firm handshake and a sharper mind. Sarah, 38, known for her Sunday pies and the way she hummed hymns while scrubbing floors. Their 6 children, Herman, 11, Catherine, 10, Boyd, 7, Paul, 5, and the babies Lena and Ina Stillinger, just 8 and 12 years old. Friends, guests. They'd spent the evening playing hide-and-seek in the hayloft, giggling as fireflies blinked outside. By midnight, the house fell silent. But not peaceful. Never peaceful again. When dawn broke, the milkman noticed the stillness. No smoke from the chimney. No children chasing chickens. Just silence. He knocked. No answer. The front door? Locked. The back door? Bolted. Every window latched from the inside. Forced entry? None. Broken glass? No. The killer didn't need to break in, because they were invited. Inside, the horror unfolded. 8 bodies still in bed. Sheets pulled up to their chins as if tucked in for sleep. But their skulls crushed. Faces obliterated. An axe, borrowed from the Moore's own shed, left propped in the corner. No bloodied handprints. No muddy footprints. Just the axe, its handle smeared with something the coroner would later call brain matter and strands of hair. But here's the detail that chills investigators to this day. The killer didn't rush. They moved room to room in pitch darkness, never stumbling, never waking a soul. The children never cried out. The parents never fought back, as if the murderer knew exactly where to step. Knew this house, knew these people, or had done this before. And then, they stayed. Hours after the murders, a neighbor swore she saw shadows flickering behind the upstairs curtains. Heard the creak of the rocking chair in the nursery, the soft thud of a child's footsteps. But when police finally broke in, they found only the dead and a single chilling truth. Whoever did this walked out of a house locked from the inside, vanishing into thin air, leaving behind one question: how? Josiah Moore was a man who wore many hats. Businessman, church deacon, father of 6. To the outside world, he was the picture of success, a man who'd built a thriving hardware store in the heart of Villisca. His wife, Sarah, was the glue of their family. Sweet-tempered, devout, the kind of woman who'd bake extra bread for struggling neighbors. Together, they were pillars of their community. But pillars cast long shadows. Whispers followed Josiah, rumors of debts he couldn't pay, of a temper that flared behind closed doors. Some claimed he'd been seen arguing with William Blackie Mansfield, a hot-headed local politician, just days before the murders. Others swore he'd had affairs. Women who'd show up at his store, faces hidden under veils, leaving with envelopes of cash. But in a town like Villisca, gossip was currency. So when the axe fell, the questions began. Was this random violence or a hit disguised as a massacre? The killer didn't just murder the Moors. They staged the scene. Every mirror in the house was draped with cloth. Every victim's face, even the children's, was covered with blankets, as if sparing them the shame of their own deaths. A kerosene lamp lay on the floor beside Sarah's bed, its chimney carefully removed. Had the killer used it to see, or was it a twisted nod to the biblical warning? The light of the body is the eye. Then there's the axe. Not just any axe, Josiah's own tool taken from his shed. The killer knew where it was kept, knew the layout of the house, knew the family's routine. This wasn't a stranger. This was someone who'd sat at their table, someone who'd watched, waited, hated. Suspects piled up fast. Frank Jones, Josiah's bitter business rival, topped the list. Jones had reportedly threatened more over a land deal gone wrong. But Jones had an alibi, supposedly miles away that night. Then there was Reverend Lynn George Jacqueline Kelly, a traveling preacher who'd given a fire and brimstone sermon in Villisca days before the murders. He'd vanished after the killings, only to resurface years later in Oregon, where he was arrested for attacking his own family with an axe. Coincidence? Or confession? But the most chilling theory isn't about a person. It's about motive. The Moors weren't just killed. They were erased. Josiah's skull was shattered so completely, his face was unrecognizable. Sarah's hands were folded over her chest, as if laid to rest by someone who cared. The children? They never woke up. No screams. No struggle. Just silence. Was this revenge? A jilted lover? A rival wanting Josiah's business? Or something darker? Some researchers believe the covered mirrors and hidden faces point to a killer consumed by guilt or superstition. Someone who couldn't bear to see their reflection or their victim's eyes. Others think it was a message, a warning to the town. This could be you. But here's what keeps historians up at night. The Stillinger girls. Lena and Ina weren't Moors. They were guests, innocent bystanders. So why were they killed? Was the murderer so consumed by rage that they slaughtered everyone in sight? Or were the girls collateral damage? A detail to muddy the trail? The police botched the case from the start. Townsfolk trampled the crime scene, pocketing souvenirs, a child's hair ribbon, a shard of broken mirror. Evidence vanished. Witnesses clammed up. Even the coroner's report disappeared. By the time a detective named Wilkerson took over, the trail was ice cold. He spent years chasing leads, only to die penniless and obsessed, muttering about a conspiracy too big to unravel. Today, the theory's split into two camps. One, a local did it, someone with a grudge, slipping away before dawn. Two, a transient killer, like Andrew Sawyer, a drifter who butchered 4 families with an axe across the Midwest. But Sawyer died in 1916, taking his secrets to the grave. But there's a third theory, one that's harder to swallow. What if the killer wanted to get caught? They left the axe behind, washed their hands in the Moors Basin, lingered in the house for hours, taunting the town. Maybe they craved attention, infamy, or maybe they're still here, in the whispers of the Villisca axe murder house, in the cold spots visitors feel in the nursery, in the faint laughter that echoes when no one's around. The truth? We'll never know. But the Moore family's tragedy forces us to ask, were they victims of bad luck or targets of something far more personal? And if so, who else was in danger that night? Sunrise in Villisca. The milkman, Dan Williams, knocked on the Moore's door. No answer. He peered through a window, saw nothing but stillness. Then a fly. One, then a dozen, crawling over a patch of dried blood on the windowsill. He ran, called the sheriff. By noon, the entire town crowded the street, clutching Bibles and kitchen knives. Fear hung thick in the air, because if the Moors weren't safe, no one was. The sheriff broke down the front door. The stench hit him first, iron and death. Upstairs, he found the bodies. All 8, still in bed, blankets pulled up, pillows soaked red. The axe leaned against the wall, its blade crusted with hair and bone. But the worst part, the silence. No screams, no struggle, just sleep, as if the killer moved like a shadow, swinging that axe in the dark, over and over, until the house fell still. Panic spread faster than the news. Neighbors accused neighbors. "You never liked Josiah," shouted one man. "You were jealous of his store," hissed another. The town split into factions. Friendships shattered. The local barber swore he saw a stranger in a black coat lurking near the train station. The town drunk claimed he'd heard a woman scream at midnight. But when pressed, maybe it was an owl. Suspects multiplied like weeds. First, Reverend Lynn George Jacqueline Kelly, a fire and brimstone preacher who'd ranted about sin festering in Villisca days before the murders. He'd left town abruptly, his tent revival abandoned. Then, Frank Jones, Josiah's business rival. Jones had publicly threatened more over a failed deal, but his wife swore he was home that night. Asleep, she said, snoring. But rumors spread. What if she lied? Then came the wild card, a transient named Paul Mueller, a circus worker passing through Villisca. He'd been seen sharpening an axe near the train tracks. When questioned, he laughed. I carve wood, not skulls. But with no alibi, he became the town's scapegoat. Mobs formed. Men with torches marched to the circus camp. But Mueller, gone, vanished into the prairie. Meanwhile, the crime scene became a spectacle. Townsfolk trampled through the house, stealing souvenirs, a blood-stained pillowcase, a child's hair ribbon. Evidence vanished. Fingerprints smudged. By the time detectives arrived, the only clues left were the axe and a basin of pink-tinged water in the kitchen. The killer had washed their hands, scrubbed clean, left the water sitting there like a dare. Catch me if you can. But the most haunting detail came from Mary Peckham, the neighbor across the street. She swore that around 4 a.m., hours after the murders, she heard footsteps. Light quick, like children running upstairs in the Moore house. Then laughter. Not a happy sound, she said. Mocking, like they were playing a game. When she peered through her curtains, the house was dark. Empty. But the next morning, the police found every door locked, every window sealed. Was Mary lying? Hysterical? Or did she hear the killer? Still inside? Some say it was the ghost of the children, trapped in their final moments. Others think the murderer stayed behind, relishing the chaos they'd unleashed. But here's what's undeniable. Villisca's soul fractured that day. Trust dissolved. Paranoia festered. A minister's son was arrested for looking suspicious near the crime scene. A schoolteacher quit her job after being accused of witchcraft. Even the sheriff received death threats. The killer didn't just take 8 lives. They poisoned the town, turned friend against friend, husband against wife. And with every passing day, the truth slipped further away. Witnesses forgot. Alibis conveniently appeared. The case grew colder, buried under gossip and fear. But one question gnawed at everyone. How did the killer escape? No footprints in the mud, no blood trails, no opened windows, just gone, as if they'd dissolved into the walls. Or worse, never left at all. Years later, a detective named James Wilkerson reopened the case. He found a witness who'd been too scared to speak. A teenage boy who'd seen a man in a dark suit leaving the Moore property at dawn. He tipped his hat to me, the boy said. Smiled, like he'd just finished milking cows. But when Wilkerson pressed for details, the boy clammed up. I don't want to end up like the Moores. Theories erupted. Was it a hired killer from Omaha? A jealous lover? A madman who vanished into the heartland, axe in hand, hunting for the next family? Or someone still hiding in plain sight? A neighbor? A friend? A face you'd trust? We'll never know, because in 1917, the case was closed. No arrests, no justice, just 8 graves and a town forever scarred. But the whispers never died. To this day, old-timers in Villisca lower their voices when asked about the murders. They'll glance over their shoulders as if the killer's still watching, waiting, and in a way they are, because the truth is out there, buried in the soil, hidden in the walls of that cursed house. Or, worse, grinning at us from the pages of history, forever out of reach. In 1933, 21 years after the Villisca massacre, a frail old man lay on his deathbed in Missouri. His name? Frank Jones, former state senator, business tycoon, and the man who, with his final breath, whispered, I did it. I killed the Moores. But here's the problem. Frank Jones had an alibi, a bulletproof one, or so they said. Jones was no stranger to controversy. He'd been Josiah Moore's fiercest rival, locked in a bitter feud over land deals and political power. Just weeks before the murders, Jones had publicly threatened Moore. Cross me again and you'll regret it. But when the axe fell, Jones swore he was miles away, jailed on trumped-up charges of tax evasion. His alibi? Signed affidavits from the sheriff and 2 deputies. But here's the catch. Those records mysteriously vanished. The deputies died in accidents. The sheriff retired to Florida, his memory suddenly foggy. So why confess? Guilt? Dementia? Or was Jones shielding someone? His son, Albert, had a violent streak. Neighbors called him unhinged. Was Albert the real killer? Did Frank take the blame to protect his family name? Or was this a sick joke from a dying man who craved infamy? Then there's the other name that haunts this case, Andrew Sawyer. A drifter, a thief, a serial killer who roamed the Midwest in the early 1900s, leaving a trail of axe-murdered families in his wake. His signature? Bludgeoning victims in their sleep. His last known attack? 1914, 2 years after Villisca. But Sawyer didn't stop there. He struck again in 1915, slaughtering a family in Kansas. Then, in 1916, he was caught, cornered by a mob, shot dead in a barn. But here's the eerie part. Sawyer was in Iowa in June 1912. A farmhand recalled a nervous stranger with a thick accent asking for work near Villisca days before the murders. Another witness swore he saw a man matching Sawyer's description lurking near the Moore house at dusk. No one checked. No one connected the dots, because Sawyer wasn't a suspect until it was too late. The problem? Timing. Sawyer died in 1916. The Villisca case wasn't reopened until 1917. By then, his body was buried in an unmarked grave. No DNA, no fingerprints, just a pattern too similar to ignore. 6 families, all killed with axes, all slaughtered in their beds, all unsolved. Coincidence or proof? But let's circle back to Frank Jones. On his deathbed, he didn't just confess, he smiled. When asked why he did it, he muttered, "Ask the preacher." Then he died. The preacher? Reverend Kelly, the firebrand who'd fled Villisca after the murders. Kelly was arrested in 1917 for trying to kill his own family with an axe in Oregon. When questioned about Villisca, he laughed. "God told me to punish the wicked." But without evidence, he walked free. So where does that leave us? 2 dead suspects, 2 conflicting stories, and a mountain of what-ifs. If Jones was lying, why confess? If Sawyer did it, why leave the axe behind? Most killers take their weapons, but in Villisca, the axe was left like a trophy, a souvenir, a challenge. Then there's the third possibility. The killer was never identified. A phantom, someone who blended into the town, attended the Moore's funeral, shook hands with the grieving, and never flinched. Maybe a neighbor, a friend, someone who still visits the graves, whispering secrets only the dead can hear. The truth? The Villisca case is a hall of mirrors. Every clue leads to a dead end. Every suspect has a hole in their story. Frank Jones's confession? Meaningless without proof. Andrew Sawyer's pattern? Circumstantial. The preacher's madness? Just another red herring. But here's what keeps historians up at night. In 1944, a woman named Edna Smith came forward. She claimed her father, a local farmer, had been paid $500 by Frank Jones to take care of a problem in 1912. The farmer died in 1913 of suicide, a gunshot to the head. No note, no motive, just another loose end. Was Jones the mastermind? Did he hire a killer to destroy Josiah Moore, only to watch the plan spiral into a bloodbath? Did Sawyer stumble into Villisca, see an opportunity, and leave a calling card he'd repeat across the Midwest? Or was it someone else entirely, a killer history forgot? We'll never know. The case files crumbled to dust. The witnesses are long dead. All that remains is the axe, preserved in a museum, its handle stained with the DNA of 8 victims, and whoever swung it. But maybe the answer isn't in the evidence. Maybe it's in the aftermath. After the murders, Frank Jones's business empire collapsed. He died broke and reviled. Andrew Sawyer's family disowned him, burning his letters and photos. Reverend Kelly spent his final years in an asylum, screaming about demons in the walls. Coincidence? Or karma? The killer, whoever they were, won. They stripped Villisca of its innocence, turned neighbor against neighbor, and vanished into the fog of time. But in a way, they're still here, in the creak of the Moore house floorboards, in the cold spots that linger in the nursery, in the nightmares of anyone who dares to ask, what if the real killer got away with it? Today, the Villisca axe murder house still stands. White paint peeling, windows cracked like spiderwebs, a for sale sign rusting in the yard. For $10, you can step inside. Feel the floorboards sag under your feet. Breathe air thick with the weight of unshed screams. Visitors swear they've felt icy fingers brush their necks in the nursery, heard whispers in empty rooms, watched toys, the Moore's toys, roll across the floor with no one there. But the real horror isn't the ghosts. It's the question that claws at your sanity long after you leave. Who did this? And why are we still asking? This isn't just a true crime story. It's a black hole. A mystery so dense, so hungry, it swallowed generations of detectives, psychics, and true crime addicts. Over 100 suspects. 0 arrests. Every theory collapses under its own weight. Was it Frank Jones, the corrupt politician who confessed on his deathbed? Andrew Sawyer, the serial killer who butchered families across the Midwest? A random drifter who vanished into the cornfields? Or something else? Something that like being a ghost? Let's break it down. The killer didn't just murder 8 people. They left a script, covered mirrors to avoid reflections, hid victims' faces under sheets, washed their hands in the Moor's basin, then vanished, leaving the axe behind like a prop in a play. Detective Wilkerson, who dedicated his life to the case, said it best. This wasn't a crime. It was a performance, and we're all still stuck in the audience. Think about it. The killer chose a night when the Moors had guests, doubled the body count, doubled the risk. Why? To make it unforgettable, to ensure Villisca's name would echo through history. And it worked, because here we are, a century later, picking at the bones. But the legacy isn't just about the killer. It's about us. Why do we obsess over unsolved mysteries? Why do thousands flock to that rotting house every year, filming TikTok videos in the attic, laughing nervously as their breath fogs in the cold spots? Because Villisca forces us to confront the void. The idea that evil can win, that someone can swing an axe 8 times in the dark and walk away, not just unpunished. Unknown. Paranormal investigators claim they've captured EVPs, electronic voice phenomena, in the house. A child's voice saying don't, a man's growl, mine. But the dead don't speak here. They watch. The real hauntings are in the living. The retired cop who drinks himself to sleep, muttering about covered mirrors. The granddaughter of a suspect who changed her last name to escape the stigma. The town historian who keeps Josiah Moore's ledger under her bed, convinced the answers hidden in his debts. And then there's the axe, the same one that split skulls in 1912. It sits in a glass case at the Villisca Historical Museum. School kids press their noses to the glass, staring at the stains on the handle. Is that blood? They ask. The tour guide nods. Yes, and hair, and maybe something else. No one mentions the letters. The death threats mailed to the museum. Put it back, one reads, or we'll finish the job. The legacy is also in what we've lost. The Moore family photos, burned by relatives too traumatized to remember. The case files, accidentally shredded in the 1950s. The witnesses who took their secrets to the grave. All that's left is folklore, a cautionary tale. Parents in Iowa still warn their kids. Don't play too late. Don't trust strangers. Don't be like the Moors. But here's the twist. The killer's greatest weapon wasn't the axe. It was time. With every passing year, the truth rots. Memories warp. Evidence crumbles. Suspects die. And the house changes. Visitors steal bricks as souvenirs. Vandals scrawl murderer on the walls. Even the walls seem to lean closer, whispering, "You'll never know. You'll never know." Yet we keep digging. In 2007, a forensic team tested the axe for DNA. The result? Inconclusive. Too degraded. In 2014, a psychic walked through the house, collapsed in the kitchen, and screamed, "He's still here." She refused to say who. And in 2023, a TikTok live stream from the attic got 2 million views. Comments flooded in. "I saw a shadow. Play back the audio." But all you hear is static and breathing. Someone else is breathing. So why does Villisca haunt us? Because it's a mirror. It reflects our darkest fear, that chaos wins. That behind every smiling neighbor, every locked door, there's a shadow waiting to swing. The Moors weren't just killed. They were erased. And in a way, we're all complicit. Every YouTube video, every podcast, every ghost tour keeps the killer alive. Gives them the immortality they craved. But maybe that's the point. Maybe some mysteries aren't meant to be solved. They're meant to remind us, evil doesn't die. It evolves. It hides in plain sight. And right now, as you watch this, someone out there is getting away with murder. Who held the axe that night? Was it Frank Jones, rotting in his grave, still smirking at the chaos he unleashed? Andrew Sawyer, grinning through the noose as he took his secrets to hell? Or someone else, someone you'd never suspect? A friend, a neighbor, a face in the crowd. Here's the truth. We'll never know. And maybe that's the point. Some mysteries refuse to die. They feed on doubt, on sleepless nights, on the way your breath hitches when a floorboard creaks. Villisca isn't just a cold case, it's a warning. A reminder that evil doesn't always roar. Sometimes it's silent, calculated, A shadow slipping through a locked door. A hand raising an axe in the dark. A killer who wants you to wonder. Think about it. Why cover the mirrors? Why hide the victims' faces? Why leave the weapon behind? Because the killer wasn't just murdering 8 people. They were humbling us, proving that even a century of forensics, podcasts, and ghost hunters can't outsmart pure, unfiltered malice. So tonight, when you double-check your locks, when you pause at the foot of the stairs, listening for footsteps that don't exist, remember Villisca. Remember that for every mystery solved, there's one that burns. One that claws at the edges of history, demanding to be heard. Stay curious. Stay skeptical. But most of all, stay afraid. Because the Villisca Axe murders aren't just a story. They're a mirror. And what's staring back isn't always you.